Yawn 1, Mr. B. I was jacked. The company commander said ashore and 378 in the same sentence, and at that moment the outside world drifted away. An adventurous daydream descended into my field of view, leaving a circle of sitting shipmates behind. Rolling seas went to rack and ruin upon the mighty prow, submersing the forecastle in muddled spray of foam and sea. Colossal black clouds on the horizon, wind, salt, and angry sky. A group of 19th century sailors shouting over the thunder as our vessel approached the surreal storm. I was ready with a thick manila line and excitement. The CC gave an order and subconsciously my body arose to a standing position, back to this reality. The circle of seaman recruits were in the process of standing too. We had been sitting on the barracks floor, receiving orders to our next duty stations. 2 more days of basic training and then we were free to show the God what we were made of. There wasn't a face among us without a grin. Chin parallel to the deck, toes 45 degrees apart. I'm standing at attention. Shit. The order stated bluntly, do not dress in uniform. My head bent, disgusted I'd failed at the simplest task to avoid unwanted attention. With a drooping head, a smudge tarnishing my shiny black boots caught my eyes. Like an autonomous robot, my hand went to fix the indiscretion. Fuck. Attempting to regain confidence, I slouched and reached deep in my pocket, feeling for something to occupy my thoughts. The original communications I had with the 378-foot cutter, the Thrill, stated to report to small boat station San Diego and await further orders. At that temporary duty station, I had received an envelope that included directions and flight itinerary. By the baggage carousel in the Acapulco International Airport, those directions are what my hands found as I pocket jerked for peace of mind. Seaman apprentice Jack ashore. Do not arrive in uniform. Do not tell anyone you are in the Coast Guard. Do not speak about the Coast Guard. A prearranged taxi will be waiting outside of your baggage pickup area. Good luck and welcome aboard. A large army green duffel bag, letters S.A.J. ashore, stenciled perfectly on the side, spilt onto the baggage claim. Snaking closer and closer to me, standing there, again at attention, with a head buzzed by a number 0 hair trimmer. My sigh was probably audible to everyone within a 10-foot radius. Yelling out of his window, I hadn't even made the taxi platform. Thrill! You go to Thrill? He was looking at me. The first symptoms of anxiety pulsed behind my forehead. For weeks I'd been eager to report to my ship. Nerves weren't expected to be a part of this. But entering the foreign taxi, the world contracted. Nervous would be an understatement. An opportunity to deliberately breathe presented itself on the ride. I'd never been to Mexico. The taxi rushed through the jungle, and every so often a gap in the thick trees would allow for a view of the ocean and harbor below. You could see through the turquoise to the bleached sand beneath. Then the forest would swallow the view again. 20 minutes into the ride, we descended into the city. Mexican children on each street corner begging at my window. Don't give nothing, the driver said. Disperse, he shouted. You in Coast Guard? You on big ship? He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. I had no answer for the guy, and the question brought on worries. I'm going to the Thrill, I said, avoiding his question, observing the lean and predatory children out the window. The taxi stopped on a waterfront street. A janky gate guarded by 2 armed Coasties. My taxi driver was waiting for a tip, which never appeared. The Coast Guardsmen approached as the taxi peeled away. Seamen ashore. I looked at their collars, saw they were petty officers. Yeah, that's me. Walked to the end of the pier. You see that guy down there? That's Stagger Lee. He'll check your ID and direct you where to go from here. Things are about to get pretty crazy around here, but don't worry about it. You'll be all right. He grinned. Nerves had solidified to worries, sitting heavy in my stomach. What did he mean things are gonna get crazy? Walking down the pier, I was beside the Thrill, taking notes as I walked. White paint, rust everywhere. 76mm cannon on the bow, 25mm on the 02 deck. A 50 cal on the 02 deck with an ammo can in place, though no one was manning it. The boat looked like a militant research vessel, odd in a tourist-ridden port. At that point in time, the thrill was huge to me. Guys at Boot said she was manned with 120 sailors, officers included, and could push 30 knots. An armed non-rate with opaque sunglasses in place of eyes, Seaman Stagger Lee, checked my ID again. He directed me to the helo hangar to await the OOD. As I walked away, I could hear him say, "He's here," followed by "Copy," from a radio. Minutes went by as I stood in a quasi-attention stance, still in my civvies. Another non-rate appeared and explained he was sent by the OOD to help me find my way. Without any sort of introduction or explanation, our first and only stop was in a dark lounge area. A small group of uniformed guys were watching The Sopranos. The non-rate whispered in my direction without looking, "Let me finish this one season, then I'll give you the grand tour. There's not much to see, really." He jumped over the couch in front of us and left me standing, once again in an awkward attention pose. What the fuck? The one MC broke the silence and everyone sat up. "All hands on duty, muster on the mess deck. Repeat, all hands to the mess deck." I grabbed my escort by the shoulder as he tried to dart past me. "Oh, sorry, man. I've got to go. Just ask a BM what to do." The room became empty, just me and the Sopranos. My knotted stomach twisted further into a ball of confusion, and my thoughts couldn't articulate what I wanted. There I was, in a dark room, finally aboard the Thrill, listening to a television alone. "You know, Tony, it's a multiple choice thing with you, 'cause I can't tell if you're old-fashioned, you're paranoid, or just a fucking asshole." An extremely loud horn started blowing outside. Shit. Back through the passageways, the way I came in, I rushed to the helo hangar. People were hurrying in every direction. No one paid any attention to me. Stagger Lee was still by the gangway, standing in a relaxed and confident gait. I headed his way. He informed me that the horn was the recall horn, and it notified all of the crew on shore to return to the ship. "We just made a drug bust, and the captain's anxious about the ship sitting here with tons of coke on board." Apparently, the captain set security watches and recalled everyone as soon as the food stores were loaded and fuel replenishments had been made. Cool. What do I do? "Go to your muster station and wait there." He took off to meet an official-looking guy on the gangway before I could ask a question. Where and what is my muster station? Underway, I pretended to be unfazed by the inadequate orientation I'd never been given. A BM3 approached me on the Fantail, where I had found a group of non-rates smoking. Without an introduction, he began running through a list of tasks I'd be required to do within my first month. "Stay away from the ship bags and you'll be fine," he stated, without ever looking me in the face. "By the way, which berthing area are you in? I hope they didn't put you with those fucking engineers." I told him I didn't know where my rack was. "What do you mean? Where's all your stuff?" "I left it in the crew lounge where I checked in." "Wait, what? Who checked you in?" "I never got his name. A non-rate. Took me to the lounge and left me there once the recall horn blew." The BM3 grimaced. "God damn it. Wait here." He walked off. I lit another cigarette. He came back a minute later and said I'd be staying in the engineer's berthing. "Go ahead and find an empty rack in there now. Then be on the mess deck for watch at 23:15. If anyone gives you shit, just give it back." He lit a cigarette and waited for me to say something. I was speechless, and an awkward silence let the sound of the sea intrude into our conversation. Pressed uniform and stomach pains, I was on the mess deck by 2300. It was surprisingly busy. Deep-fried imitation mozzarella sticks were being served. Mid-rats, I later learned. A decky introduced himself. "Hey, are you the new guy? I'm Riley. You'll be my break-in on helm tonight." "Oh, cool, just tell me what to do and I'll do it." "Haha, scuttle that excitement, new guy. You'll just sit and point the stick at whatever number they tell you. It's pretty stupid. We'll go up once the BMO gets here. Smoke 'em if you got 'em." There was a door on either side of the galley that led to the exterior walkway on the main deck. I chose the one where no people were congregating. When I latched the door behind me, the ocean took me by surprise. A silent blackness surrounded the ship. A rush of warm wind made my face smile, alone with the humid night and sparkling cosmos. Under my feet, the ship was plowing away phosphorescent clouds of sea. I lit a cigarette, leaned on the rail, put my foot on a chock. It was my first solitude experience at sea. No sign of life existed anywhere nearby. Behind me, steel bulkheads. To my left and right, a dark hallway. Above and below, more steel decks. Forward, the sea, the sky, with no boundaries separating the two. The sound of the ship was moving through the dark sea. My mind was quiet. My mind is never quiet. My cigarette wasn't half gone when Riley appeared behind me. There you are. The BMO is ready. We're all here. Might as well go up, was the BM-3's logic to start our shift. We, the watch relief, left the mess deck for the bridge. One silent ladder after another through the dark passageways, illuminated red, my nervous thoughts distracted by unfamiliar objects flickering with reflective tape. We climbed towards the bridge, forward without speaking. I took up the rear, one last, lightless, steep and skinny ladderway, and the BM-3 knocked on a door, then creaked it open. He nearly shouted, "Request permission to be about the bridge," pulling me out of my silent thoughts. Mimicking my shipmates, I put a salute on my forehead as I arrived on the bridge for the very first time. There, in the glowing darkness of the bridge, 3 or 4 stories above deep black ocean water, I stood at perfect attention as the watchstanders exchanged information. A month out of basic training, my ability to stand at attention, salute, and say yes sir was at an all-time high, and as I did that, I perceived the many pieces of equipment and people around me. It was whelming, and I focused on standing stiff. Once the ritual was finished, Riley led me off the bridge to a ladder and we climbed. We'll stand lookout first, then in about an hour we'll come back down for the helm, he said. On the flybridge, a girl emerged from around the mast. She looked at my eyes and smiled. "Hi." Riley seemed annoyed. "Lois, are you going to give me the pass down or what?" "Oh, sorry. The shore's behind us about 30 miles. There are a few fishing boats back there too. No other contacts." She pressed into me as she moved by us and disappeared down the ladder. For an hour I stood in awe of my position. Freedom and power were present from that vantage point, in the dark Pacific. Stared at the sea, the stars, where they met. Riley seemed unwilling to talk about work. The BM-3 soon relieved us back down to the bridge to switch watches with the helmsman. It was my turn to take the helm, to drive the boat. Serious was my 18-year-old attitude. Thankful to be doing something significant with my life. When we arrived on the bridge to take the helm, there was a new officer of the deck. There, in a tall, skinny gait, stood Mr. B. Quietly, he was staring into the blackness of the ocean, and then down into his mug. Back and forth, I noticed out of the corner of my eye. As I was debriefed on my duty at the helm, I got this. I had 2 courses to steer by, a gyro course and a magnetic course. Each was numerically different, though directionally the same, a curiosity I cared not about at that time. A stool in front of the helm was restricted for use by qualified personnel only, so I stood and held the helm tight. The slightest movement turned hundreds of tons of ship. The BM-3 ordered me to report my heading to the OOD. I was briefed on how to do this, and I spoke to Mr. B for the first time, relaying the course he already knew we were steering. "Sir, steering 185, sir. Magnetic 193, sir." That being done, and Mr. B saying nothing of my report other than "copy," I stood and looked down at my instruments and commenced steering a course. Quiet. Riley leaned silently on the radar beside me and said little, as he was either a shitty instructor or there was little to teach, or something else. I didn't know, but I felt too uneasy to ask. There were gadgets everywhere. A faint smell of musky hung over people. A quartermaster bent over a chart, making marks under a red lamp. The radar screen scanned. The BM-3 stepped into the bridge. "All clear about the decks." The doors on either side of the bridge were left open. We were in the tropics in the summer. It was musky, hot, and dark. Peaceful. Quiet. Mr. B interrupted the dark glow of the bridge. "Ashore, is it? Is that pronounced a-shore or ashore?" There was no time to answer. "Hey, a-shore, do you know why someone would wrap a hamster in duct tape?" I stiffened in my seat. An awkwardness descended around me. The helm I was holding was being held tighter. My eyes moved quickly around the bridge, embarrassed and cowering faces covered in the flickering cast of dim red lights. Riley's finger was poking at my shoulder, tapping me to get me to respond. Shit. No, sir, I don't, sir. My reply showed signs of discomfort, though it made an appropriate effort to speak to my superior in proper tone and order. He spoke and laughed like a weasel. Anyone know why you would wrap a hamster in duct tape? We all looked around, our heads nodding no, looking at the floor with forced smiles. Mr. B answered his question so no one was spared. It's so it doesn't pop when you fuck it. Footnotes 6. Jack designates both class and size in Middle English, poor and small respectively. In the past 4th century, it has been applied to tools, jackknife, animals, jackrabbit, and laborers, lumberjack. But it is in the form of sailor we are most interested. Jack was a clever name to call someone who had climbed the mast, Jack Cross Tree, the smaller of the mast, cross beams. Jack was then corrupted to Jack Tar in the 18th century. Tar, because sailor used tar on everything, including their clothing, to wick away water. Later, it was just Jack, a sailor. And so, the corruption continued, and Jack drifted into the land of verbs to describe a sailor. Muscle, thick, excited, drunkard, rough, ragged, thief, to be jacked. 7. Company commander, also known as the drill instructor, the guy at boot camp who yells at you every moment of every day. 8. Seaman recruit, the lowest rank in the U.S. Coast Guard, E1. 9. Cutter. In this sense, a Coast Guard ship which has living quarters and berths aboard. 10. Knot. Nautical mile an hour. The ship's log used to be an actual log, thrown overboard with a line attached around it. The line was knotted every few feet. The time it took the log to drift and pull X number of knots away from the ship could be used to roughly calculate speed and drift. Thus, the etymology of knot and ship's log. 11. OOD. Officer of the deck, not necessarily captain or master of the ship. The OOD is the on-duty person in charge of the ship. The captain takes this role the second he is present. 12. Civvies, civilian dress, regular street clothes. 13. Non-rating, a low-level enlisted person without a rating, someone without a specific job, boat bitch. 14. 1MC, first main circuit, shipboard public address system. 15. Boatswain mate, a sailor skilled in vessel operations. 16. Fantail, the aft portion of a vessel, which, depending on organization-specific vernacular, can encompass the working area on the back of a ship. 17. Midrats, a meal served at midnight, often reserved for the incoming and outgoing watch only, abbreviated midnight rations. 18. Decky, a member of deck force. 19. Watch relief, the individuals readying to relieve the current watch standers. 20. Flybridge, the highest area of a ship one can walk, not located on a mast, where a lookout would stand watch. 21. Quartermaster, QM, the official log keepers and navigators aboard a ship. QMs have merged into the BM rating in the Coast Guard, which caused a lot of animosity amongst those with that rating. Yawn 2, BM3 Jack Kurtz. New guys are pipelined through meetings with their chain of command and with department heads, each person giving a full dose of their personality. The BM1, BMC, and 1LT cornered me and quickly explained work orientation and rudimentary customs and procedures, each with a helping of witticism that made me silently question their legitimacy. The captain's quarters had a makeshift waiting room with a couch, where I sat at attention while the busy captain bellowed, "Welcome aboard!" so loudly I was startled. I could only see his shadow silhouetted on a fabric partition that separated his bed and office from the view of the waiting area. "We've been busy, obviously, and I hope to have a longer one-on-one with all of my shipmates in the future." His voice went from loudly passionate to more and more faint with each word. "Also, I have an open door policy, so if you..." He mumbled something and became so quiet the exchange was inaudible, and I missed the rest of his policy. The XO warned about poor hygiene. The EO said not to touch anything. The FSC gave me a rundown on chow times. Then I was off to the DCC, an experience I've recorded later. And finally, my berthing area petty officer, boatswain mate 3rd class Kurtz. Kurtz led me to the deck force berthing areas, Hotel California and Margaritaville, and demonstrated his leadership ability once we got there. He pointed to a rack and said to keep my shit clean. If you stay out of my way, I'll stay out of your way. You'll be moving into Margaritaville in a few weeks. Margaritaville had 14 racks, including 4 3-highs and a 2-high. Combined, there towards the front of the ship, just before the mast, lived a majority of the seamen, with their 2 berthing area petty officers, both BM3s, Kurtz and JJ. Space was limited in these living quarters. In Margaritaville, my long-term home was the top rack of a 3-high, located just inside the entrance. It was situated where I'd be blasted with light and noise each time someone opened either the head or the main door. The space in front of my rack was a gap no larger than the width of an adult gorilla, about 2 foot by 6 foot, and overhead about 7 foot off the deck. Built into the racks were horizontal lockers on which a 3-inch pad rested. The crew of Margaritaville were all old-timers. After Kurtz, a gang-like group of friends made sure I knew my place. Stagger Lee, Legit, and Ray made the space feel more like a holding cell than a berthing area. Footnote 22. Pipeline training. Quickly going through mandatory meetings and training to meet the requirements of a new position or unit. 23. 1LT, the first lieutenant, is a position on a vessel, not a rank. This position is under the operations officer and has charge of deck force. 24. XO, executive officer, the second in command. 25. FSC, food service chief. 26. Deck force, a department aboard a ship containing boatswain mates and non-rates focused on operational activities. Launching small boat, painting, mooring, anchoring, more painting, chasing rust, painting again. Yawn 3, DCC. A loud, short man with the mission to save the boat from sinking. Everything was a threat to our boat, according to our bouncy damage control chief. Everything that didn't sink was a fire hazard. Every non-rate, a moving disaster in need of abuse. He stood with the ridiculous sea stance, 4 feet wide. He was only 5 feet tall. We were 2 days out from Acapulco, and I was still ignorant of ship life. The chief in front of me was the last signature I needed on my orientation list, and he took me directly to the fantail to introduce himself. The ship hardly swaying, only a few degrees, judging by the massive sea whiz behind him. His hands animated his voice, wild and passionate. He introduced me to each and every fire station, halon station, lifeboat, and gear locker, and he articulated each and every way the boat could sink, burn, or explode. He assigned me a 5-pound qualification packet and ordered me to have each item memorized and signed off by one of his guys. You have to think about the worst-case scenario at every moment on this ship. Are you smoking where you shouldn't be? Is there an egress route nearby? Is there adequate ventilation in your workspace? If there were a fire, how would I respond? Put it out? Give the signal? What? What would you do? By the time you leave this boat, my mission is to make you the safest goddamn fucking coastie out there. There's no room for fuck-ups at sea. He lit a cigarette while glaring at me. Look, if you prove yourself to be a hard worker and you want to get away from those deck apes, you know, those friends of yours who chase rust and paint for a living, I'll pull you over to the engineers. I'm always looking for quality guys. You look mechanically natured. You aren't scared of hot, tight spaces, are you? I shook my head and started at an answer. Wow, thanks, Chief, but I think I want to be a boatswain. He bitterly cut me off. Look, you fucking deckies always think you know best. Well, I'll tell you something. It's the engineers that make these boats perform, not the boatswain mates, not the goddamn officers, not the cooks. You think a cook is going to make a 12-cylinder engine run for 3 months straight? That's 36,000 horsepower, bud. He took a huge inhalation of his smoke and gestured for me to light one up too. His voice went up in pitch and volume. This reminds me, you fucking deckies think you're so smart, but you can't close a fucking watertight door correctly. If I catch you improperly securing a watertight door or hatch, I'll make your life hell. As he barraged me with his ego trip over my innocent comment about wanting to be a boatswain mate, I pretended he was a little naked midget clown. I fabricated a rainbow wig and inserted it on his head as he lectured. He kept gesturing for me to join him in a cigarette. I lied and said I didn't smoke. Footnote 27, Sea Whiz, a high-speed machine gun capable of shooting incoming rockets, planes, missiles, and bombs out of the sky. Looks like an oversized R2-D2 with a machine gun penis. 28, Fire Station, a location aboard a vessel which has firefighting capabilities. Fire hose, extinguisher, AFFF, etc. 29, Halon. Halon is a toxic gas chemical used to quickly put out fires in engine room spaces. Journal entry, October 2002. My energy level is crushed. Nothing is what I expected. At this point, I'm writing it all off as an isolated situation. Literally isolated. So many angry, disgruntled, lazy assholes. It will get better. Benefit of the doubt, right? These guys have been at sea for some time. Maybe I'd be like them too. The perfectly transparent water of Acapulco Bay is stuck in my head. It had zero reflective qualities, like vodka with backwash. My first lookout watch was good. From the flybridge, you could see for 50 miles plus. The stars, the horizon, the sounds and wind. It's where I want to be. Leaving Acapulco, we passed by a huge lighthouse, and from the flybridge tonight you could see it flash in the distance. My mind overlays my mother's lighthouse, the one at the end of the driveway. That fucking plastic lawn ornament, every day, dragging tracks in the gravel, kicking rocks, walking home, flashless. Yawn 4, Seaman Stagger Lee. Man, all these clowns running up and down, round and round. Haha, man, if you fuckers would just chill. Advice from Stagger Lee's mouth as he crawled on hands and knees cleaning the berthing area. Decked out in PPE, blue latex gloves, dust mask, dark sunglasses, sharp uniform. Stagger had been on the boat for years, 3 or 4 maybe. Always full of energy, smoker, apparently liked by the 1LT. He was one of the alpha males in the berthing area. Between him, Kurtz, and Legit. I watched him closely when I first arrived to the boat. There was something there I could not relate to. A cultural thing that I missed in my youth, perhaps. Something else. Energy. Style. Yawn 5. Legit. Seaman. Someone had music blasting during the fight. That fucking song that wouldn't stop. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I am for real. The engineers had teamed up with the cooks and had entered Margaritaville like they were a SWAT team. In a moment of seconds, our berthing area went from a relaxing lounge, most of us in our racks, the usual gang playing Xbox, to a pile of sweaty dudes yelling, wrestling, and taking cheap cracks on each other in a dog pile. These fights were becoming more regular and more intense as the patrol went on. The boat was split into groups, divided first by division, deck force versus engineering, and then by berthing area. Sometimes the divisions weren't so clear. The main point was to burn off testosterone, I speculate. For this specific fight, our fellow deck force members from Hotel California had previously negotiated a truce with the engineers. This meant that Margaritaville was greatly undermanned. There were 14 of us and 20 more of them. Outcast was still playing as we fought. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times. A punch landed in my side and made me curl into a ball. I was on the bottom of the pile, 6 or more bodies on top of me, yells increasing in volume. A burst of anger came from high on the pile. Who the fuck just hit me? Someone was throwing painful jabs. Aggression was building and the quasi-fun dog pile was getting heated. From the bottom, I could see through the limbs and bodies and saw Ray, Seaman, on Tiki's fireman's back, throwing jabs into the back of his head. Tiki slammed all of his 220-pound body back into the locker, and Ray's body arched as it hit a coat hook. More screaming. I felt space generate under me and I reacted with my feet, placed them under me and shot straight up, throwing people off as I went. I dove across the room and grabbed Tiki's belt and ripped him down. I was on the bottom of the pile again instantly, this time flattened like roadkill with my chest unprotected. But my left fist was exposed and I went for any fireman I could see. An authoritative voice was in the background. "Cut it out! Quit this shit now!" The pile on top of me started to lighten, more rustling and more shouting. Legit and Ray had cornered Tiki in a corner and were threatening him. Tiki was a giant mass of muscle from Haiti. Him and Legit, both huge black dudes, made Ray look like Rudy from the Notre Dame football team. Tiki looked like he wanted to kill someone. Ray and Legit were about to attack him. I was making my way for the three to join the fun. Legit raised his arm to throw a punch and his elbow caught me in the face in the process. My instincts weren't the best. "What the fuck, boy?" He took me to the floor in a flash and was on top of me, a knife hand in my face. "What you call me?" The room had stopped. "My baby's drama's mama don't like me. She been doing things like having them boys come from her neighborhood." Blaring on the stereo. I could sense the eyes on me. Legit was staring at my face. I could throw him off, but I needed to defuse this situation. Fuck, I'm gonna get mastered for being a racist. I said, "What you call me?" Ray was piping in. "What'd he call you, man? What's up, Legit?" "He knows what he called me." For centuries, both the British and American navies used the term boy to mean unqualified seaman, i.e. cabin boy. This tradition lasted all the way through the beginning of the 20th century. Boy is also a term white races use to refer to black people. Journal entry. November 2002. Made it back, wanted to stay longer. Clark said he would buy me a fifth of Jack. Said that I'd be wise to load up on Robitussin too, because that was the last time he'd buy me booze. The HS chief said there wouldn't be any openings in the barracks for a few months, and I, as a new guy, would have to live on the boat for a few deployments first, before being eligible for the barracks anyways. The second we hit port, everyone scattered. A group of deckies said they were going to a pre-game in the barracks and said I could come along. The barracks turned out to be a 12-story building about a mile from the boat, still on the Navy base. I expected some sort of order, but there wasn't any. About 10 of us were crammed into a little room and there was an endless supply of cheap beer. Within hours of pulling into San Diego, I couldn't walk. Instead, I stumbled back to the boat in the cover of darkness and managed to crawl back into my rack. Yarn 6. Georgia. Seaman Apprentice. Labels based on character, personality, deeds, or looks are common on ships. Jack London based each and every one of his characters off of a socio-political emotion. Melville's characters on the Pequod were symbolic of dogma, personality, and culture. Mark Twain's America's classic personalities. He didn't make the classic, he just did the obvious thing and put them in prose. Dana conspicuously left out the characters of his shipmates, with the exception of the handsome sailor, who Melville later borrowed. Georgia was from somewhere in the South, had an accent, and was thick and hairy. As a thrill pulled into San Diego from the Acapulco deployment, Georgia and a group of other newbies were standing by on the quay wall. Within a day, the lot of us were placed on mess cooking detail, where we bitch worked for the cooks for a month. Mess cook duty would start at 04:45, underway or in port. This was to help the cooks begin prepping for breakfast, which was served at 0600 each day. A mess cook's first task each day is to clean up mid-rats from the night before. Next is to carry the cook's food list from the storage to the galley, one order from the reefer and a second order from dry stores. Dry stores was located in the forecastle below the boatswain hole. The reefers were located in the rear of the vessel below aft berthing. Each order for each meal will require a few boxes from each location. This could take an hour of slumping heavy, cold, broken boxes across the length of the ship. Due to a 15-foot ladder, dry stores required at least 2 people. This is where Georgia and I spent the first month on the ship. With the right attitude and skill, a trip to dry stores could be extended to last a few hours. Georgia and I mastered the art of dry stores shitbagging quickly. We spent hours each day during work routine talking about music in the South, relaxing. It was a rite of passage.
Willie is a good man, though some of his shit sucks. You know that gospel shit he does, man? I can never get in that shit. Jerry Garcia plays some good gospel music. Woo! Goddamn Jerry Garcia. What about old Merle Haggard, huh? You like him, huh? I like Merle. My pops used to blast nothing but Merle. Hey, sure. You know David Allan Coe, huh? You know who David Allan Coe is, right? Man, you ain't from the South. You know Virginia's about north as you can get, huh? David Allan Coe is the shit. My pops loved him. We used to listen to him everywhere. Oh, man, he's got some racist songs out there. You ever hear Rudolph the Big Lip Nigger or Fucked by a Nigger? That shit is real country. He's good. Not all his shit is racist, though. He's got some sad, bluesy shit, too. You gotta look him up, for sure. You say you like Waylon. You like Coe. He's the shit. These conversations would go on from hours to days, and I'd just soak it in. Georgia placed a lot of music in my head, from country western to the Grateful Dead to Warren Haynes, the influence people have over us. George and I also shared drug stories. Man, you did too much acid. I never touched that shit. In Atlanta, we had the tweet tweet. You know what the tweet tweet is? Ashore? Goddamn. Woo! Snort that shit, smoke that shit, pack that shit in the gums. Goddamn. Hey, Ashore, you ever go to TJ? I heard they got some cocaine down there that will make your blood boil. Woo! Goddamn. Let's go get some tweet, brother. Woo! Tweet, 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 tweet. Footnote 30. A quay is the area of a pier structure which is perpendicular to the pier or dock fingers. The quay wall specifically is a physical wall that divides land from water. Note that a dock floats, a pier is not affected by tides. 31. Mess cooking, the lowest position on a ship. Duty assigned to serve the needs of the cooks, scullery maid, deep sink bitch, wardroom attendant, etc. 32. Boatswain hole. Area of the ship reserved for projects of the boatswain mates. Deck force mustered in the boatswain hole aboard the Thrill. 33. Shitbagging. Verb. The act of artfully, strategically, or casually not doing work. Yawn 7. Seaman Cook. We were mustering one morning in the boatswain's hole, Mr. B about to take center stage, when Seaman Cook made a grand and loud entrance through the 8-dog watertight door. We all turned as we heard the first dog rotate open. The others quickly followed. Cook walked in, closing fast the door behind him, dogging down each dog, the bottom right dog hanging loose because the wedge lost its rubber long ago. His face was marked with a purple bruise that encompassed his entire left cheek and most of his eye socket. Cook. Sorry, I'm running a little behind this morning, Chief. Mr. B, sorry. Mr. B. What the fuck does this look like, Cook? A bed and breakfast? Can I make you some pancakes? How about a smoke and a pancake, Cook? Hey, Cook? Hey, Riley, how's about a smoke and a pancake for Cook? Cook. Oh, sir, I've got a story. Mr. B cut him off. Nobody cares, Cook. You're late. B1, talk to Cook about this after muster. What, Cook? Someone give you the old reach around? The old reach around, huh, Cook? No shit, sir. I was beat up by some tranny hooker last night in TJ. There was a prolonged moment of silence. Did underage Cook just admit to going to Tijuana last night? Did he just confess to buying a tranny hooker? What the fuck? Mr. B's face was caught off guard, but his dirty mind didn't miss a beat. BMC and B1 looked to the ground. Stagger made the only noise. Woo! Cook, I said nobody cares. Unless there's a part about a reach around. You give it or get it, Cook. The old reach around. Mr. B's face slowly turned into one of intrigue and genuine excitement. Cook, we got a booth and she was talking about money. When she took off her pants, I noticed a bulge in her panties, and when she caught me staring, she hit me right here with her elbow. He pointed to the wrong side of his face. I fell down confused and put my arms over my head. Then that fucking transvestite started peeing on me. I covered myself and curled up, and when the piss stopped, I looked up and she was gone. She stole my fucking wallet. The B&1 grabbed Cook's arm. All right, Cook, that's enough. Come with me. Seaman Gabriel stood up to plead some sort of case for Cook, but we didn't get to hear it because he hesitated long enough to silence himself and sit back down. The B&1 led Cook back through the watertight door. 8 dogs open, 7 dogs closed, 1 hanging loose. We listened and watched the movement of each one. Mr. B. I bet he got the reach around. Footnote 34. Dog. Opposite a cat. Also, a rotating lever on a watertight door or hatch, used to compress the door to the bulkhead. Commonly used doors would have a quick-acting handle, which would close all dogs in one motion. Yawn 8. Stagger Lee. Seaman. White glove inspection. The door was cracked open. I could see Stagger in the head on his hands and knees. He scrubbed the corners of the deck where it met the bulkhead with a toothbrush, back and forth at an unnatural speed. A paper dust mask and sunglasses covered his face, scalp perfectly shaved, reflective, just like the linoleum deck. In a flash, he went from his crawling position to standing up. He faced himself, leaned in so far his mask started bending inwards on the mirror. He leaned back and removed that annoying object and exposed a double layer of pristine white, perfectly in-line teeth. He put his brush under the faucet, then to his teeth, with a deliberate and precise stroke, back and forth, faster than before. He stopped suddenly and froze. A prolonged moment. He removed the brush and pushed his sunglasses to his forehead. He was staring at my eyes by way of the mirror. It took me seconds to realize I was watching him watch me. My eyes blinked and my forehead contracted, then relaxed. He gave a slow-motion wink and kicked the door shut. No grime was safe from the XO's white glove. Followed by the HSC, the XO went from one compartment to the next, inspecting for cleanliness. Each Friday, Stagger arrived ready to go, excited to outwit the man, toothbrush in hand. This Friday was a bit more intense. As we made preparations to get underway, we were given a 2-week notice. The vibes from people on the boat were a mixture of excitement, anxiety, and despair. Each vibe correlated to a person's family status. Loners were excited, family men were despairing. Stagger grabbed me one day during muster. "Can I use the shore for inventory today, Chief?" We spent hours in the boatswain's cage recording the serial numbers on each of the pneumatic and electric tools. As we went through the list, Stagger prodded me for details about my past. As the lead seaman on the Thrill, I was a bit cautious to respond accurately to all his questions, but when he said that Georgia and him were talking about me, I gauged his inquiries were more for his personal protection than for any specific interest. "I heard you liked the party." Yawn 9. Blue Jay, Seaman Apprentice. It was only after the herpes outbreak had taken over his chin that I spoke with him. Before that, he was just some new guy on the boat. At least 10 other new people had come, and 10 older guys had left. New people lost their novelty. We were all strangers, even as we became intimate with each other, sometimes for years. He was at the butt of every joke. The herpes outbreak was icing on the already glorious cake. The sea story of Jay and Blue Jay spread like Bravo fire through the boat. Introduced by Seaman Gabriel, who was a first-person witness, it gained tremendous momentum from Mr. B. Tijuana is where everyone underage went to party while not on duty. The Thrill homeported in San Diego, 32nd Street Naval Base, amongst most of the Pacific's naval fleet. Being so close to the border, it made sense for us to head there to buy booze and whatever else we wanted. We could get alcohol in San Diego, though there would be a surcharge as we would have to pay an older shipmate to buy it for us. Ironically, Blue Jay was over the age of 21, but he went to TJ for more important things than alcohol. It was late one night in Tijuana when Jay and Blue Jay met each other. After a long and dirty evening, Blue Jay stumbled outside a tourist bordello for a cab to the border. That's when he ran into Jay and Gabriel. In the awkward and coincidental meeting, the three caught a cab together. Jay and Blue Jay jumped in the aft seat of the cab without much thought. Gabriel was in the passenger's seat, and the cab driver, well, he was in the driver's seat. In the back seat, my slosh friend Blue Jay decided to make a move on Jay, which turned out to his benefit because she took the attention to heart and sucked his dick in return. All the while, Gabriel and the cabbie enjoyed the show. To make things more interesting, the cabbie decided to tilt his rearview mirror towards the back seat and get a good view of Jay's panties, which were nicely displayed between her splayed legs and summer skirt. The cabbie reached for Jay's crotch and started fingering her while he continued to drive with his free hand. Blue Jay received his lifelong nickname the next morning when Gabriel spilled the story to the crew. Mr. B, forever being amongst the yarn, began to refer to the two as a pair of doves, then to expedite his witticism simply as Jay and Blue Jay. A week later, Blue Jay, full of anger and embarrassment, broke out in the worst herpes rash anyone has ever had. It crawled over his face like ivy in a wet rainforest. Footnote 36. Bravo fire. A fire burning liquid or combustibles for fuel, gasoline, JP5, diesel. Journal entry. We must come down from our heights, see what has been wrought among our fellow creatures by accident, hardship, or vice. Richard Henry Dana, Jr. January 2003. Today was a shit show. There were family members all over the fucking boat. Seems like half the boat was sitting on their ass, two facing their wives as the boys and I fiddle-fucked the mooring line, smoke lamp extinguished. We were late to sea by hours, then had to stop in Point Loma to get our smokes in. A neighboring carrier had arrived earlier, and the families at the dock were less in number than the families on our boat. Those bastards have been at sea for 6 months. What are we doing? Going to Disney World for a few weeks, bitch-slapping some unlucky Mexican fellas, and returning quasi-heroes? What does the Navy think of us? We moor on their dock scraps, deploy to vacation destinations, and flood the boat with the families of lifers. Their floating cities disappear for half the year. Crackerjack uniforms and bunnies aboard. They come home to radio salutes and missing wives, parades and newly unwrapped red, white, and blues. America, fuck yeah. Footnote 37. Carriers. Large naval vessels which act as a landing area for both helicopter and fixed-wing aircraft, i.e., aircraft carrier. Yawn 10. Gilmore, Seaman Apprentice. Gilmore arrived about the same time Blue Jay did. There was nothing there in the beginning that foreshadowed our friendship of 20 years, at least not that I recall. Like Blue Jay, Gilmore reported with a group of other non-rates, all seamen who would replace my status as one of the new guys. Gilmore and I first met during a deck force meeting. Those daily musters took place in the boatswain hole located on the second deck, the level down from the main deck in the forward part of the ship. The boatswain's hole is the one place on the ship that a member of deck force might feel at ease with some sort of charge. On the Thrill, the deck of the boatswain hole was painted with a 6-foot skull and crossbones. Its overhead rose 20 feet above the deck, where a large removable hatch allowed cranes to lower ammunitions and dry stores, and a mass of different lockers created the perimeter bulkhead. The boatswain's locker was a storage room for deck force tools. Fire locker number 1 was primary mustering spot for general quarters fire teams. 2 line lockers were on either side, which included all of the mooring gear for the forward part of the ship, as well as deck gear for anchoring and towing evolutions. Forward was the sea chest, which was a locked area where crew were allowed to store personal items for long periods and where crew were not allowed to hide to have sex with fellow shipmates. And then there were 2 8-dog watertight doors on either side. One led aft to the second deck passageway, and one led forward to the hazmat locker and paint locker. The main door, leading aft to the second deck passageway, once was a quick-acting watertight door, but the DCC had replaced it so deckies could learn how to properly dog a door. A meeting in the boatswain hole entailed about 20 to 30 deck force personnel, all the boatswain mates, the BMC, and Mr. B. Deckies would sit in a circle, the newer guys in the middle of the circle, and the petty officers would stand around the circle, leaning against the various bulkheads, lockers, and gear. The BMC and 1LT would move about at their discretion. I sat leaning against fire locker number 1 with a horrid hangover, wearing dark sunglasses, trying to focus just enough to respond to any order from above. Mr. B was yakking away, showing off with the new guys. Gilmore was sitting in front of me wearing those old janitor-looking uniforms we used to wear back when the CG was DOT. I could just make out a Pink Floyd sickle tattoo on his left shoulder. I knew I had to befriend him. He was more than a Pink Floyd fanatic. His father had named him after David Gilmour, and his older sister and him had remembered the words to the entire Bob Dylan discography. Gilmore was a third-generation Coastie, along with his older sister who was then stationed in Portland. Gilmore's dad worked as a civilian Coastie, writing contracts out of Mobile. Gilmore was not fazed by my abrupt questioning over his tattoo, and we were quickly making plans to talk shop over music. By this time, the Thrill was prepping for another Southern Pacific patrol. My time on board had exceeded 6 months, and the new guys, especially Gilmore and Blue Jay, were looking up to me to answer questions about prepping for sea. Stock up on cigarettes, even if you don't smoke, was my first line of advice. My second was, they can't test you for Robitussin. And finally, you'll need niacin after the port calls to help detox. I was proud of my knowledge, and I was being a good guy by sharing it. No one bothered to take me under their wing in the beginning. We set sail once more for the Central American coast and were given no other details of our mission. Moving a few hundred miles a day from San Diego, we were in operation mode by the second week. By week 3, we had found an Ecuadorian fishing vessel adrift off the coast of Guatemala. There, 50 miles from the nearest coastline, floated a 60-foot wooden trawler out of fuel, out of supplies, and with 120 hardly alive Ecuadorian political refugees, crammed into every cranny, awaiting their freedom or death. Our helo had spotted them, and it took us at least 2 days to highbell to their location. In an effort to manage smells, the migrants had tied their dead to long lines at the end of the trawling booms. The official dead count never made it to the crew, though the number was above a dozen, mostly elder men, I heard. As we took them aboard, I learned my first Spanish words. Una más. The politics behind this quasi-rescue mission I never understood. As we approached a port, which we later found out was Costa Rica, we were informed that our new company would try to jump overboard to avoid being detained. I didn't know where we were and what we were doing. There is no way they did either. And as we anchored in a cove within a few hundred yards of a beach, we watched as the poor bastards hid their few valuables in their shoes and underwear. It was known that immigrants will be robbed, beaten, abused, and raped on their long journey back to their home country. It was also understood that their attempt to flee may be met with draconian law or even death. Yea, the thrill. And then we went on to our other business of chasing supposed enemies. This business was arbitrary for us crew, other than it allowed us duties in addition to our daily routine of double watches, helm lookout, followed by the day-to-day work routine, painting and chasing rust. We'd often launch a helicopter to extend our eyes. As part of the helo deck fire team, we would stand by in the helo hangar. At the chance of a fire on the flight deck, I'd take my guitar and strum to Gilmore's lyrics, singing, "Whoa, ho, ho, would you give me a chase, please? I'm all jacked up and on my knees, yo, ho, I'm all jacked up." Just like commercial ships, the Thrill often needed to replenish food and fuel. Hidden port in any foreign country comes with a big cost to both the Coast Guard's operations and the crew's pockets. If we were lucky, the crew would not know if we were approaching a port call until the day of, because the excitement made the clock slow down. Often both the time and location were classified information and were restricted to specific personnel on the ship. Critical information like length of stay, liberty status, and drinking rules were never confided to the crew until final division musters. The length of stay was also a variable of what stores and fuels were needed. If we had to replenish everything and take on a truckload of fuel, we would be at the dock for a few days. For certain captains, under certain conditions, like the time I met the Thrill in Acapulco, a Cinderella liberty would be implemented, whereby all crews should be within a hearing distance of the ship's whistle and back on the ship by midnight each night. This Cinderella liberty was a good way to quickly get back underway, but it also forced the crew to keep their partying to a minimum. Other captains would initiate drinking restrictions. No drinking, or no drinking if you're under the age of 21. Whatever the case of liberty, the captain was often stuck in a predicament. He would want to return to sea ASAP to fulfill the mission. Drug runners often had their own intel and would only send ships up the coast if we were in port, though he would also want to keep his crew under control. Too long of a stay and his crew could get into trouble. Too short of a stay could lead to animosity from the crew. Drinking rules also came with a conundrum. Rules didn't mean shit when you were out of uniform. A captain who issued strict drinking rules was a captain who stayed busy with mast and court-martials. No fun for the officers to deal with all that paperwork. Gilmore and I hit port for the first time together that summer in Mazatlán, Mexico. Once off the ship, about 5 of us deckies stood on an old rundown corner with our shirts off, scrawny arms in the sun. All of us chain smoked as we savored our first 6-pack of Modelo. The dirty streets called for us and we were thirsty for action. An OS1 asked if we'd go in on an 8-ball, and in a drunken moment I was in a room with about 10 people from the thrill, a mountain of cocaine in the center of us. More on the bedstands, a giant brass bed behind me, a huge rush through my heart, confusion in my head. Gilmore in the first talking politics, a bottle of Jack, scuttlebutt being flung around too fast, I couldn't make sense of it. Then a knock at the door, someone said, "Oh shit, it's Chief." Commotion everywhere, panic, scurrying people everywhere, hiding powder and paraphernalia. Desperation flooded my brain as I thought about getting kicked out of the guard for drug abuse. With no great spot to hide, I ducked behind the bed and crawled under. Beneath the bed I found a brown woman in nothing but her panties, mascara smears under her eyes. I ran my gaze over her dark skin and pain-stricken face. I put a finger over her lips. Shh. We could hear someone enter the room. The party continued. I listened to it all night, watching feet. I never made the connection between the strange girl quietly crying in her underwear beside me and the reality of the situation I was in. I wanted more coke. My emotions jumped sporadically from fear to laughter. Where the fuck is Gilmore? The girl beside me couldn't understand my English whispers, so I took the opportunity to use a joke I'd learned from Mr. B. Hey, don't turn this rape into a murder. My humor was lost on her and it made me feel sick. The night slowed and the feet became fewer. I couldn't hide any longer and I advanced from my foxhole. The OS1 was staring at me in astonishment and I walked around him like it was nothing, out into a hotel hallway, out into the brightness of a day, downhill, towards the water. Getting underway after a port call requires hard labor for those on mooring detail, me and Gilmore. On the fantail, we had 2 BM3s, 1 BM1, and the ops officer. Sometimes the BMC would come around and shout, "Hey now," as he walked past. Gilmore and I were one of 10 deckies who responded to orders about handling lines. Our mooring lines could be set up to 150 feet and they were 3 inches in diameter. They would be hauled in and flaked out by manpower alone. Once clear of the port, we would coil the lines in the line locker below, a small dark void with no ventilation. The BM3s would pick the deckies who smelled the most of alcohol. Or, if the deckie was smart, he'd volunteer to be in the void, making the BM3's life easier, thus gaining status amongst the higher-ranking crew. We always volunteered. The line lockers lacked ventilation, and on a tropical summer midday, liquor dripping from your pores, vomiting was not uncommon. Again, to hide the deed of drinking underage, one could not vomit up stale alcohol in front of his superiors. In the line locker void, the stench of stomach vile and moldy mooring lines would often overpower new crew. Gilmore laughed as I hurled in the corner. Footnote 38, line. The only rope you'd find on a ship would be on a spool. Once off the spool, rope becomes line. Mooring line, working lines, heaving lines, running lines, etc. Using the term rope around a boatswain mate is a good way to weed out a person with poor self-management skills. 39. Standby to wait for an order. 40. Port call. A temporary stay of a vessel while on a prolonged deployment. 41. Liberty. A period granted to sailors to leave the ship on their duties. 42. Cinderella liberty. Temporary liberty which ends at a specific time, normally midnight. May also have other restrictions like a distance or alcohol restriction. 43. OS1. Operations Specialist. 1 equals first class, which is the 6th rank in the listed realm. 44. Scuttlebutt. First used to describe a person with an ass so big it would not fit through a scuttle, a door opening horizontally through decks. Later, it was corrupted to mean water fountain, or a place to group together and gossip about big asses. And eventually it was corrupted again, just to mean gossip.
Yawn 11, FS3 Karamat. We weren't friends. He would buy booze. If I paid for it, we would share.
Underway, we were assigned the same GQ1 billet at the 50 cal station. It was a billet which required standing by in a flash hood, smoking cigarettes and making small talk as the thrill pushed onwards towards more water, cutting holes in the sea. Drills were almost daily, if not every other day. Again and again, Karamat and I would don our musky, fire-retardant hoods, light our cigarettes, and say meaningless words. That's a pretty sunset.
Karamat's lover. It was amazing that he could drive to El Paso and back on a weekend. He'd hit an ice pipe on a Friday afternoon and he'd race off. On Sunday night, he'd stumble into the barracks having never slept with stories of his teenage lover. She was 17. Her mother acknowledged and accepted their relationship, so he said. They met during a port call Karamat made on a different ship in Mexico and had fallen in love. Karamat talked about her soft, curvy teenage body, mostly. By smoking meth in San Diego, he found the time to make the drive to Texas and back. The short time window and drug habit created a conundrum for Karamat's sex cycle. It takes me hours to come, he'd tell me, while he leaned against the railing, smoking. Haha, she loves me, man. Shit, her mother loves me. I think I'll marry her and get BAH. I'd have to pull my flash hood down around my neck to release the heat buildup. Everything he said after his description of fucking went right by me. As the rest of the crew went through the drill routine, or fire-oil problem, I'd stand by the 50 cal with an erection, picturing a young blonde girl and Daisy Dukes getting railed by my 27-year-old shipmate. Her in love, him high on methamphetamines.
Footnote. GQ1, a list of predetermined position for all crew during specific ship operations. 46. BAH, basic allowance for housing, a monthly stipend service members are entitled to under certain conditions. BAH amounts can vary from $500 per month to $4,000 per month. Yawn 12. Lois, seaman apprentice. She was on the fantail after mooring stations were secured, watching the Central American coastline disappear. A shipmate of ours, Clark, who later was kicked out for repetitive AWOL convictions and reporting drunk to duty, was watching Lois schlep wet line to its storage locker. Not giving a shit to help, he was chain smoking and giving her harsh criticism about what she could do better. The rest of us were resting against the rail, watching in anticipation of Lois going on one of her fits. She did. Her yells at Clark were met with escalating jeers.
Lois, if you would just stop worrying about me and just put the line away like a real sailor, you'd be fine.
Lois yelling,
You son of a bitch, fucking help me! You're not doing anything! Fucking help me!
The white and yellow hats, the supervisors, were getting a kick out of the fiasco as well, and we all looked left and right for popcorn. Soon, Lois's scream turned into cries, and Clark lit another cigarette. Lois swung at Clark, who was able to dodge it easily. Lois pursued, stumbled over a pile of line on the deck, and fell to the non-skid. You fucking asshole! She screamed and charged him again. Clark chanted, Jerry, 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 as she attacked with punch after punch. The laughs and taunts from us audience were growing louder. Emotionally hijacked, she threw up her arms and started aft, away from us, to hide from the scene. Then Ops, Lois, get back here and finish stowing that line properly. We all got quiet, watched, lit cigarettes. Clark lit one too. Then Ops. Journal entry, February 2003. It's strange to write in here. Each punctuation seems to match the sway of the boat. One pier in this trough, one comma in that crest, port, starboard, port, starboard, port, starboard. Where are we swaying to? While making my way through the officer's deck, I passed by the 1LT's door and over him saying we were not going home on schedule. I've noticed that everyone has shit all over the racks. Photos, TVs, PlayStations. Fucking Stagger has a rice cooker. My rack is empty. Where are all my memories, my distractions? Do guys really come in their socks? Stagger said he could give me meth if I was interested. Yawn 13, BM3 Silver. A scream in the middle of the night. Daddy, don't go! Startled, I jumped up, bashing my face into the fire main directly above my rack. Confusion. A light came on. The headlight. What the fuck? What the fuck? Legit murmured from his side of the dark berthing area. Quietness. Margaritaville was awake. It took a few moments to realize what had happened. that BM3 Silva, the new guy on deployment, screamed in his sleep. The next morning, I overheard Jack Kurtz whisper to Silva. Silva's face fell to a frown. He was walking out of the berthing area when Ray yelled, "Daddy, don't leave!" There was a chuckle from each rack. I felt a grin grow on my face. Yawn 14, C. Mendoza. It was too hot to be outside, above 100 degrees with high humidity. The 1LT hadn't been seen due to some unknown illness. The BMs had us fucking needle gunning the gun deck without shade under the equator sun. The plan was to needle gun the non-skid off on day 1, prime on day 2, and paint on day 3. On day 1, there were 6 of us, blasting Beach Boys, wearing BDUs cut at the knees, hot shorts. The needle gun's violent jackhammering blocked out any chance of hearing the music. The high bulkhead aft of us blocked out any chance of being seen from the bridge above, and the port and starboard watertight doors prevented a boatswain mate from flanking us in surprise. We devised a system where one person would needle gun on the far side opposite the stereo. The other 5 would enjoy the music, chain smoke, and keep watch on the watertight doors. Dozer was on the needle gun, focused on drawing a dick in a non-skid. Legit, Riley, Ray, Lois, and Cook, Blue Jay, and I were taking turns watching the watertight doors, ready to pounce to work, practicing the art of shitbagging, skin browning in the tropic sun and ocean reflection. Suddenly Dozer yelled and his needle gun stopped. "Shit!" We all ran over. I actually managed to needle gun through the hall, straight into the boatswain hole. A small beam of light shone through, about the size of a nickel. We all fingered the steel deck in all of its thinness, from years of rust and corrosion, or from cheap build. We didn't know. On day 2, the primer bubbled on the deck and created noxious fumes, which quickly mixed with smoke from our never-ending cigarettes and dissipated. The remnants dried into putty. On day 3, we entered the Gulf of Tehuantepec. The bare steel took wave after wave. It would be rusted before we left calmer waters. Footnote 47, non-skid. A 2-part epoxy mixed with sand to create a non-slippery surface for the deck of the ships. 48, bridge. An area that encompasses a vessel's helm, pilot house, and other steering stations. Captain. Now hear this. We've been waiting for this, ladies and germs. Our helo has just reported a go-fast 40 nautical miles from our position. It is taking action to intercept them as I speak. This is what we train for. This is what we do. You know what to do. GQ2. I repeat, this is not a drill. GQ2. Ops and staff report to CIC. Yawn 15. Blue Jays. Seaman. The Coast Guard, maybe military in general, tries to keep enlisted men on their toes to prevent complacency, but also to promote loyalty. If you cannot establish yourself in a community because you move every few years, the organization becomes your community. Your ability to join networks and groups outside the Coast Guard is diminished. Similarly, if you cannot settle, you cannot become complacent, and thus, the Thrill tries to alternate her operations between north to fishery patrols in the Barren Sea, then south to drug patrols in the Pacific. It was on my second patrol south, and Blue Jay's first, that I became aware of the irony of what we were doing. There is nothing essentially wrong with cocaine. Like most other recreational drugs, it was outlawed due to the Christian vote. Any attempt to alter consciousness is an affront to their existence. It is mistakenly known to cause health problems. It only does so due to the mixture of obscure chemicals dealers cut it with, which would be a non-issue if it were legal and then regulated by the FDA, like alcohol. In its pure form, a large dose can be lethal to your heart, but so can alcohol, Tylenol, and dieting supplements. Cocaine in its pure form is what the Thrill chased off the coast of Central America. Cocaine in its pure form is on the streets in Central America. It's cut with toxins in the USA, and most people here are using crack when they think they are using cocaine. A big and unnecessary mistake. Also,
Laboratory drugs like methamphetamines are more common in areas where natural drugs like cocaine are hard to get. Cocaine in its pure form was the drug of choice for coasties and port calls in Central America, because it would leave your system in a day or two and not expose you during random drug tests, like marijuana would. Cocaine in its pure form was lining my nasal cavity as I sat in a random room in Puerto Vallarta. I was examining a beautiful jungle on the glossy laminated pages of some magazine. I was in a lobby or a waiting room, and Blue Jay had left minutes or hours before in the back of a pickup truck to get drugs. Wait here, dude, I'll be right back. The reaction someone with ADHD has to speed is not what you would expect. Like the harder drug Ritalin, cocaine brings focus, clarity, and control to the user. It also brings euphoria. My fading focus and dwindling good sensations snapped my attention to the room I was in Blue Jay's absence. Where am I? Where did Blue Jay go? I looked around for a clock, a sign, something. Through the door, the city was booming. Foot traffic, beater cars, cops, sun. Where the fuck am I? How long have I been here? My sense of time was blemished. How long have I been in this port? There were people becoming concerned about my presence, though no one seemed willing to speak to me, which is a good thing because it would have been in Spanish. I was becoming concerned, too. What will I do if Blue Jay doesn't return? Is he okay? Should I leave? Did he leave me? I watched people come and go, all looking at me and then quickly looking away. I felt the sweat build up on my forehead. My anxiety became unbearable, and without more cocaine, my thoughts were turning to mass paranoia, coerced by days with no sleep and only alcohol for fuel. A young Mexican guy walked by the window, again and again, looking in, maybe to monitor my position, I thought. It was time to make a dash for it. I collected my thoughts and decided to trick the authorities who were obviously about to bust me. My plan was to nonchalantly stand up, then suddenly and with extreme speed dash for the door, run across the street, and run as fast as I could for as long as I could. I wouldn't look back. I would simply sprint, and if I found a ditch or a bush, I would jump in it and hide. They would never find me. I stood up and pretended to stretch. Then I turned and pounced for the door. My movement left me awkwardly jamming my arm into the glass. Over my shoulder, a person stood up and shouted something. I muttered something about being okay and opened the door with the opposite hand. I stepped onto the street and went to run. Over my shoulder, I heard, "Ashore, help me!" I started running. What the fuck was that? Fuck me. I ran faster. My thoughts got the best of me and my planning went to shit. I slowed to a walk, then a stop. Then I bowed my head and looked down for the longest time, panting. Fuck. I expected a federale to shove an AK in my back at any moment. Nothing happened. I was outside and it was a beautiful sunny day. The crowded streets didn't even notice me. Was that Blue Jay back there? What was wrong with him? I walked back to the corner and peeked around the adobe brick building. There was a man curled in a ball beside an entrance to a bank. Blue Jay? I walked towards him, looking left and right and over my shoulder at least a dozen times before I made it across the street. It was Blue Jay, shivering with his arms clutched around his knees. Blue Jay! Dude, what the fuck? Where you been? He yelled at me. His face was covered in tears. His eyes were swollen shut. What happened to you, bro? They fucking pepper sprayed me. The last sentence triggered something uncomfortable in me. What about my $100? Blue Jay had gone off to find us more cocaine. I was too paranoid to go with him, so he told me to wait in the lobby of the closest building. I was sobering up. Who cares about your $100, man? They fucking pepper sprayed me. I could see he was hurt, but I was really scared now, coming down. Hey, man, are you okay? What can I do for you? Did you get robbed? Dude, they fucking took me to an alley and held a gun to my head. They took everything. They took my fucking Coast Guard ID, man. Fuck your money. Get me out of here. As he was talking, I caught a reflection of myself in a window and almost laughed. A giant cowboy hat rested on my head, face covered in days of scruff. My wife beater was covered in a brown stain. I looked down to analyze it and saw I was wearing sandals that weren't mine. Are you listening to me, Ashore? Fuck, man, help me out of here. How Blue Jay found these guys, I don't know. But he got in the back of their pickup truck. They drove around the corner into a dark alley and robbed him at gunpoint. They pepper sprayed his ass. He stumbled back around the corner, across the street, on an adrenaline high and became so disoriented that he just sat down on the street and curled into a little ball. He was literally 10 feet from me as I sat in a paranoid panic moments before.
His current mood was anger. Mine was anxiety. I wanted coke, and Blue Jay wanted to be safe aboard the ship. I helped him up, and we slowly walked the best way we could. Downhill always leads to the water. Boats are on the water. He kept his eyes closed, so it was slow going. I just assumed we'd get arrested before we got back. Suddenly, and out of nowhere, a van pulled over beside us. The passenger door rolled open with a slam, and to everyone's surprise, Seaman Gabriel, Cook, and a group of girls, who couldn't have been more than 16, were on the other side. Cook yelled, "Ah ha ha, look at you crazy fucks!" And then Gabriel, "Oh my God, guys, what happened? Get in the van, ha ha, Jesus Christ!" Yawn 16. Gabriel, Seaman. Back in San Diego, I was eligible for a room and rack in the barracks. The chief in charge gave me first dibs at who I'd room with, and I quickly chose one of the new guys, Sheen, over the other option, Gabriel. In the chief's office, I made some joke about getting roofied by the Jesus lover. When I opened the door, the bastard was leaning on the other side and almost fell into me. Without missing a beat, he started, "God bless you." "Dude, you need to stop with your holy roller shit around me." "Well, he blesses you anyways." "I'm from the belt buckle of the fucking Bible Belt, so shut your fucking mouth when you're talking to me, you fucking weird fuck." "Jesus saves ashore." Gabriel was Jay's mentor in Tijuana months earlier. She followed him to TJ and then into the taxi. Bless his soul for accompanying that young bloody virgin to Tijuana. There was Gabriel, delivering her while Blue Jay had his phallus sucked clean. And there was Jay being diddled by the taxi driver. "Punta, punta!" Gabriel no doubt had shouted as he jerked clean his own sin stick. Gabriel was the preacher aboard the Thrill. If he had alcohol in his system, he was a loud preacher. If he was fucking one of the new people aboard, they were most likely drugged or chloroformed. He was a sinner who needed Jesus. And if he anticipated hard work, he was the saint who had to volunteer his time with the chapel. Gabriel liked hermaphrodites, and he was obsessed with his body. He posted photos of himself all over his locker. With a dark tie tan, Gabriel was first-generation American. His parents were both white missionaries from Thailand, which was the best joke of them all, that Gabriel never got. Now that I reflect on it, maybe he was adopted. Whoops. It was in each port call that Gabriel would show up with a stupor and a ladyboy. He would shout at us, "Isn't she hot? Look at her, she's gorgeous, a true child of Jesus." We would notify him that the ladyboy had a penis bulge in her skirt, and he would look baffled. "No, that's so gross, you guys. Ha, fuck you."